Professor A.S.N. Chakravarti, the chairman of this event and the head of our department.
Good afternoon, Professor. It's really nice to meet you.
Thank you for
hopefully
your
we'll
support.
meet one day in person.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to.
It's our pleasure to involve you in our global webinar.
Yes, it's an honor to be honest, and I have been following the webinar. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate in the events through the Zoom, but I have been following it through the video clips shared on the website and YouTube.
So let me introduce you to the participants. How you speak Abdullah?
It's Abidullah Zarghoon.
Yeah, so participants, here we have Abidullah Zarghoon, who is currently working with National Procurement Authority of Afghanistan as a senior security specialist and acting head of Security and Quality Assurance Department. Is a member of National IT Professional Association of Afghanistan, that is NITPAA, and Innovation and Technology Research Center Afghanistan, that is ITRCA. So we are very happy to you be on our board, and we are eagerly waiting for your session on challenges for security professionals in developing countries. So mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for the kind introduction. I currently work with National Procurement Authority, and it's really interesting what we have here. But before here, I was working with the Ministry of IT and Ministry of Communications and IT, and particularly in AFCERT, that is Afghanistan Cyber Emergency Response Team. And I'll touch on that a bit later on. So if the time has come, so should I start my presentation and start my session, or should we wait a little bit longer?
You can start, Ramesh.
Okay. Thank you so much. Before I have been following through this event and a lot of interesting sessions, and thank you, professors, and thank you everyone, the participants, for allowing us to be part of this session. I just went on in the direction of a little bit not very technical, but something that I personally felt like when I was coming back to Afghanistan, I hope I knew the situation of the country I was coming back to, particularly in security session. So that's why I shared this topic with the team, and they were really welcoming as to see what the challenges for security professionals in developing countries are. Now, obviously, developing countries are different from place to place. As for example, if we look at what people in West think about, is even India is kind of what they say is a developing country on its way to becoming a developed country, or something similar is said about Bangladesh and most of the countries in our region. But that's why I wanted to specifically target this presentation on a country like Afghanistan, who is recently being introduced to technology. Now, some people might say that Afghanistan has been introduced to technology since 2002 when the interim government was established. Yes, it is true, but if you see the relevance or relevantly, Afghanistan has been new compared to other countries in the region or globally. So that's why my case study will be focused on the particular challenges that security professionals in countries like Afghanistan or some other countries that I have been to, where there is a good infrastructure, but there are some challenges that we face. For example, I have been to Uzbekistan, and I can relate to their challenges, or the challenges that security professionals had there, similarly to what our case is in Afghanistan. So before we start, I want to talk about myself. Thank you, Professor. Professor Chakravarti talked about it, so I wouldn't say a lot about myself. Just I have completed my master's degree in cybersecurity from University of Bradford in 2017. I was a Chevening Scholar. After returning back to Afghanistan, I worked as an expert with Afghanistan Cyber Emergency Response Team. And at the same time, I became a researcher at Innovation and Technology Research Center for Afghanistan. I have also published a paper on evaluation of antivirus against modern malware. It's published in IEEE. Currently, I work as a senior specialist, security specialist for National Procurement Authority, and I'm acting head of Security and Quality Assurance Department. What we will have in this session is, first, I will talk about a little bit about the presentation, how is it created, and then we will talk about state of cybersecurity in Afghanistan, what we have, what we don't have, and then we will talk about common security threats. When I was with the AFCERT, there were some threats that were really common, that were really common cases that we had to address. And then we will come to the main topic of our presentation or session today, that is the challenges for security professionals. I have categorized it in three ways, three particularly topics, but obviously there can be many things. This is all my doing, and that is technical challenges, what a professional will have in his job, managerial challenges, what they might face as managers, and what are the legal challenges, what should they do, what shouldn't they do. And the final part is the way forward, or in particularly, I meant the last slide, I changed the name to what are the scopes for those challenges. So starting with the introduction, usually in terms of technology, what I like to call a developing country is a country that is relatively introduced late to technology. For instance, Afghanistan was one of the very affluent countries in terms of technology when it was the time of King Zahir Shah, or after that it was the time of President Dawood Shah. In 1955, that is almost more than 60 years ago, we had our Ministry of Communications and Technology back then. But during the Taliban regime, the whole infrastructure was destroyed. Everything, no phones, nothing was there. And honestly, their internet was considered something taboo because it was considered haram due to the explicit images some websites might have. So no one until 2022, sorry, not 2022, but 2002, had access to internet. And by the time the Taliban regime was taken out by Americans and NATO, in the late 2002 or in the beginning or mid 2003, there were only 3,500 phones in the whole country. I remember that. In 2003, we could buy a Nokia phone for 7,000 Afghanis, which is at these days almost $100. And then we would buy a SIM card for around 13,000 or 12,000 Afghanis, that is $150. So that was the state of IT in Afghanistan. We did not have any computers, mainly because there were, nobody was didn't know how to use it. And but that was the introduction of technology back to reintroduction of technology to Afghanistan. What happened was in 2019, the cybersecurity branch was created. So that is almost around 10 or 11 years ago. So in 11 years ago, we relatively have developed a lot, but there is a lot we should accomplish as in terms of developing countries. And because we have a lot to accomplish in the future, and because there are no proper infrastructures or something like things that can help the professionals in IT in Afghanistan, the challenges arise. And before we go to the challenges, I want to talk about state of cybersecurity in Afghanistan. So we have an entity, a ministry that is communications and IT. And under communications and IT, we have a directorate known as Information System Security Directorate. So what is Information System Security Directorate? Basically, whatever happens in terms of security and the whole government infrastructure is related to you know, let me give you an example. If something happens in Ministry of Finance, for instance, a breach or something related to security, they will inform Ministry of Communications and IT, and the entity that is Information System Security Directorate have to respond to that. And inside that Information System Security Directorate, there is a specific branch that is AFCERT, Afghanistan Cyber Emergency Response Team. What we have in terms of tangible laws, regulations, or something like that, at the moment, the only thing that has that Afghanistan has at the moment is a penal code for cybercrime. That is signed, that is approved by Ministry of Justice, and then approved by the Parliament. Except that, we do not have any other laws, regulations, or acts that concern privacy, that concern protection, or that concern cyber, like the big picture. There is no cyber law, or there is no information technology law. Specifically talking about information and IT, we have some laws right now at the moment, and they are under the process. Some of them are drafted, and then they are sent to be approved by the Ministry of Justice, and then they will be sent to Parliament for approval. But as of speaking during this presentation, I can say that we don't have anything. Probably in the next few months we might have it, but at the moment we don't. This is what is the state of security in Afghanistan. So with the looks of it, you can probably think that based on that, there is a very small infrastructure of security in Afghanistan. The security infrastructure is very minimal. If I remember properly, since I think the whole security staff in Ministry of IT is not more than 50 people. But whereas compared to South Korea, where I was, there was only in one entity, the one, I think it was KISA, there were more than 1,000 security people, security employees. Everyone had their specific station. One was responsible of DDoS, one was responsible of virus attacks, and one was responsible of breaches. But in Afghanistan, the whole thing is controlled with the human power of 30 or 40 people. So, what are the common threats, security threats, when you are in a developing country? First and most important there is that DOS or DDoS attack, denial of service and or distributed denial of service. We had that once, and probably one of the easiest ways in a developing country to mitigate such an attack is pulling out the plug, because what you are hosting is probably not more important than the attack. So that's one of the cases I want to say. In a developing country, I might say is that attack is something that is very important in terms of addressing, rather than trying to isolate the attack, isolate that machine where attack is happening, and then perform some things. Or in distributed denial of service, you can you can block the packets that are coming towards you. But that is one of the most common attacks or threats we face. The second very, very serious threat is insiders. Now, in a country, I think most of the respected guests here, they can also not relate to it particularly, but they can they might agree with me, is that in a country that is very diverse in nature of nations, there are always insiders, whether it's because of hatred towards the organization, bias, money, whatever it is, but there are always insiders. And I have to say that in developing countries such as Afghanistan, usually insiders are not discovered. Most of the things that we have heard, and most of the times when I am talking with managers of the IT community, they are, I can say 90% they are afraid of their own employees in technology, because the IT staff is behind the firewalls. It is working with the computers. There are no restrictions applied on it, except for the ministries that, such as Defense or Interior, except that there are really a small number of restrictions on people within the organization to control them. Now, insider is a big threat, but in my opinion, as an employee, as a security professional in Afghanistan, I think one of the most daunting challenges for a developing country is the undiscovered attacks. No one in in a developing country can 100% or can at least 50% tell you that their servers might not be infected. They don't know whether there is someone in their servers, whether there is someone not in their servers, because they don't know how to answer to those attacks, how to check it regularly, where to check it, how to log things properly. So there is a very big, how can I say, there is a very big tension, or very big challenge for the security professionals and IT professionals in Afghanistan, and that is the undiscovered attack. They don't know if they have been attacked or not, because they don't have the culture of checking the logs regularly. There is no culture of another entity being hired as a security company. So I think one of the most daunting challenges for professionals in security and security professionals in Afghanistan or developing countries like such are the undiscovered attacks. Even if you feel something, there is something wrong with the system, something is not happening right, where usually in my case, when I was in AFCERT, I was called to an entity because they thought there was an attack. And the first thing as a security professional, when you don't know what to do, is you check the logs. And I asked them for logs. There were no logs. They did not have any logs. I looked for the application logs, everything. So basically, they were suspicious of an attack, but there was no vector to track that attack, whether it was an attack or whether it was from within the website. So that is one of the very daunting challenge. But as a professional working in security, especially working with an entity that was also working with a public, usually in developed countries, such as Western countries, or I think in India as well, identity theft is a very big problem. People steal, bank fraud is a big problem. Facing public is stealing the credential of the banking, because there's online banking, and then there are credit cards that can be used in identity theft. But in Afghanistan, we don't have that infrastructure currently in place. So we are not really worried about our online banking. Even the online banking, the so-called online banking in Afghanistan at the moment is also based on paper. That's how thing happens. But what are the most common challenges or threats in public, if you're a professional facing public side, is the first case you will always see in developing countries is blackmailing. Even in Uzbekistan, people face this challenge a lot. Usually there are pictures, and sorry for saying this, but in a country so conservative like Afghanistan, blackmailing is really easy. If you find a fully clothed picture of a girl and you know the girl, you can blackmail her, let alone having her not inappropriate pictures or having her secret pictures. That's not even a challenge. just have some normal picture and you can blackmail her. Defaming is a very big challenge in Afghanistan, because in developing countries, usually when the country is developing, we have a lot of figures in the society, and some people don't like those figures. And instead of having a constructive criticism about them, they usually go and try to defame them, spreading fake news about it. I remember a case where news was being spread against a minister, or a director in Ministry of Finance, accusing him of theft. But unfortunately, that because of the lack of infrastructure, the person could not be apprehended. And that's one of the things. Defaming is a big thing. And then there is impersonation. So impersonation is also includes defaming, but usually there will be the same thing. Like I say, there will be people who will just create an account with someone else's name and then try to post something. Even sometimes the things they posted would be an exact copy from another person who was the real person. There was no defaming, there was no blackmailing, but impersonation also happens a lot. So the two attacks or the threats we have down there, they are kind of distributed between the public and the organizations. Virus attacks can hit public as well, and virus attacks can hit organizations as well. We have instances where virus was sent to both of them. And social engineering, I wouldn't be exaggerating if I say social engineering in developing countries is a piece of cake. You can, within an hour or two of interacting with someone, you can definitely guess their password. You can definitely ask them to give you their passwords. You can become friends with them. You can have a very, very close relationships with them, because there is a lot of trust going on in terms of technology when you're interacting with people. And then in a culturally countries such as Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, India, Pakistan, there is usually a lot of trust, a blind trust between people. A friend can ask a friend about his password, and if one person does not give his password to his friend, then his friend will be sad, and that's why he cannot bear the sadness of his friend, so he might give him his password. So the social engineering aspect is also very easy when you come to the organizations. The same thing, the same cultural factor is adds a very big role into that. In an organization, you can do social engineering quite easily just by asking your colleague to give you his computer credential, because your computer does not have an internet and you want to send something very important as an email. So it is really easy to do social engineering inside the organization as well. And that makes it a very big challenge for a security professional in a developing country. Because you cannot find the culprit. If someone has something, if someone, let's say John gives his password to Mike, and Mike does something really serious from his computer, and you go to John's computer, John, and you say that this thing happened from your computer, and he obviously will deny it, and he will tell you that Mike had access to my computer. When you ask Mike, and that, why did you do that? It's a very simple scenario I'm trying to say, and Mike will also deny it. So as a security professional, it is very hard for you to have address those challenges. So now coming to our part, that is challenges for security professionals. Coming to the challenges in itself, we will talk about technical challenges, managerial challenges, and legal challenges. What I mean by technical challenges is that as a security professional working in the environment, that is a technical challenge. A managerial challenge as a manager, as a director, what challenges do you face? And legal challenges are those that gives you the dilemma of, should I do it or should I not do it? Is it legal? Is it not legal? So we will talk about those. Now, technical challenges, one of the one challenge that we usually face a lot in developing countries is lack of infrastructure. There is a serious lack of infrastructure when it comes to a developing country. Especially, there is a serious lack of infrastructures in terms of the IT itself, let alone security. And that makes it very hard for a security professional to work around a very particularly loose and very insecure infrastructure. For instance, getting your organization to invest in SMIME or invest in security tools such as security incident management tools or security loggings and those things, it's really hard. It's near to impossible because the cost is a lot and the funding is really little. And then we will come to the other challenges and where we will talk about it. Another thing is lack of resources, whether you call it academic resources, whether you call it data, whether you call it analytics or the tools. There is a very lack of resources when inside your work. You will not have a very good data in your hands to analyze it. You will not have a lot of logs in your hands to analyze it. And then you will not have the tools, even if you have the logs, to analyze that. So it's a very, this is one of the another challenges. But these two challenges can overcome. For instance, in infrastructure, you can use that little small infrastructure, you can secure it. That's not impossible. And even without going to get Nexus, like the very big security tool or Metasploit Pro, you can use the small tools, you can use open source tools. That's also not a big problem. But what is the big problem is the restricted knowledge. Now, a person is usually trained in those big things. And when he comes back and he wants to do something with those things, the government or the entity organization will not pay $20,000 for Metasploit Pro just for an occasional, or let's say a once in a year or twice a year security testing or penetration testing. So the knowledge plays a very big role in one of the challenges the technical people will face. Now, if you are a senior expert and you are coming to the country with a vast knowledge, then you have to know that the people who will be working with you will have restricted knowledge. You have to work on that. So this is a very, this personally for me, one of the biggest challenges I have faced so far is this, the whole capacity thing. It's very, very hard to address. And you cannot make someone understand the whole technology in a week or two, especially when there is no segregation of duties. So if you are a department of security, then everything related to security, whether it's infrastructure, whether it is penetration, whether it is getting international standard applied or getting, for instance, ISO, or whether it's development of policies, whatever comes to security, no matter whatever it is, if it has the word security in it, or if it is related to the word security in it, it is your job. And then you will have a team of 2 people who will be basically trained in something else, and then you will have to assign them to create policies. So the segregation of duties is very important. We will talk about how these things can be overcome in developing countries. And the lack of policies is another challenge that is there. Whenever I have been to many organizations as a employee or as a tester or as an audit, and none of those organizations was able to find any policies related to security. So the whole security is a mixture of technical things. The security is a mixture of controls. The controls should be there in place. Those controls can be technical, something that machine will do for you. But in order to have some legality to that technical control, you have to have a policy that is approved by the higher management. So there is a there's a big lack of that. And then it's a one-man show, as I mentioned in the segregation of duties, is you have to do everything yourself. So I was trained, I studied more like offensive technology. But when you come into the work, you have to do defensive technology, you have to do policy level thing, you have to do ISO implementation, and then you have to do the offensive technology. So it's basically a one-man show. And I wouldn't lie if I say that most of my friends in the community of security in Afghanistan, they work in a very big organization, but usually they are just one security guy. I have seen people like I know some companies in abroad, in Europe, in India, they have one security or two security personnel, but then they outsource their security services to a security company because they are the professional. But we don't have that in Afghanistan. We don't have a security company to outsource it to. So you will be the one person hired as a security expert, and then you will be expected to do everything you have to do. The same as a one-man show, then there comes higher expectation by the management. So you are a guy, oh, you are the security guy, then why are we hacked? So having a security guy in a developing country means that you're immune to being hacked or immune to security breaches, which is not true. Security breaches happen most of the time. And I think these things happen because we don't have entry-level jobs. In India, in UK, I was intern in a company. I was recently graduated from my master's degree, and I was an intern there. They had really basic entry-level jobs like junior cybersecurity analyst, and my friend was working there for 3 months. He was just looking at the logs. He was not allowed to do anything beyond that because the company said that you have to understand what the logs are, and because this is where you will find the attack. But in Afghanistan, unfortunately, there are no entry-level jobs for people like that. If you come as a security professional, then there is, because currently the security is in demand in Afghanistan, and the positions are high up. So you don't have those entry-level jobs where you can analyze logs, or then when you can go with an auditor so to see how he audits anything, and then you learn from him and you help him audit something, and then you become an auditor, or you go out with someone as a associate to a pen tester, and he does the pen test and he gives you tasks so you can build your knowledge on those tasks and then become a professional. That's one of the challenges. There are no entry-level jobs, especially in the government. There are no level jobs. And when you come to the private sector, I don't know if there is a company that exists, basically a security company. There is no security company in Afghanistan. Those are the technical challenges. There are plenty, but these are the challenges that a guy in a work environment will face a lot. And then there are managerial challenges. As a manager, when you come to become a director of a certain security unit, you will see definitely that there is a lack of capacity. Your staff has the capacity that in the staff there is relatively low compared to what you have seen in other countries. And it is reasonable to say that, of course, developing countries will have lack of capacity, especially in a field that is relatively new, like security. But when you find that capacity, when you find someone very good, then the compensation for that capacity is not there. The security professional will ask for a very demanding salary, but you, on the other hand, tied with the ropes of government or with the ropes of your organization, will not be able to provide him that compensation. So that is a big thing. And then the higher management, like if you're working as a director in the ministry, the minister is will not be very concentrated on these issues. He will have other issues in hand which are more in terms of priority, more important to him or more important to the higher management than your security. And now cyber and a developing country, specifically a developing country like Afghanistan, where there is war or it has been affected by war for so long, cybersecurity is not the priority of the government. There are many priorities of the government, but cybersecurity is a very small priority compared to those priorities. So anything that happens to security, when you take it to up higher the management, up higher the level hierarchy, there will be other things that will be pushed forward than the cybersecurity priorities. One of the examples I have to say is when I was working with the Ministry of Communications and IT, we were planning a lot. We did a lot of hard work to create a very good concept paper about security operations centers, along with a very good proposal. And like we did a lot of whatever was required of us to do to get that security operations centers up and running in the Ministry of IT and Communications. We did that. The higher we were going up the hierarchy to get approval of the higher management and the managements and other entities like Ministry of Finance, that was where the challenge began. There were other projects that, in their opinion, were far more superior to having a security operation or cybersecurity operation center in the government. So this is one of the biggest challenge as a manager in developing countries. Now, specifically coming to entities that deal with cybercrime, that deal with cyber emergencies, we don't, unfortunately, there is no collaboration with external entities, such as we don't have, I'm sure we have esteemed members of Indian CERT. I think we don't have the Afghanistan CERT and Indian CERT does not have any kind of MOUs or memorandum of understanding signed between each other. We don't have any MOUs until I was working there. We did not have any kind of MOU signed with other entities, and I think we currently don't have as well. And similarly, most of the internally in Afghanistan, most of the ministries or most of the government entities and private institutions don't know that there is a CERT that that is responsible for the emergency, computer-related emergencies. Now, coming to the final thing is legal challenge. There is no particular law that can tell us what to do online and what not to do, except that penal code that we have. And let's not restrict it to only what to do and what not to do. Currently, one of the biggest challenges I faced personally with National Procurement Authority was having a PKI infrastructure in Afghanistan to provide us with certificates. Now, if you don't have any laws that regulate any of IT-related matters, it means you do not have any actually tangible things to tell you you are wrong or you're right. Based on that first thing, the first point I have mentioned there, we don't have any e-transaction law, we don't have any digital signature law. Hopefully, I'm very hopeful it will come in the future, but mostly I think in the in developing countries, emails are not considered to emails are not accepted as proof because it's electronic and you cannot sign it. You cannot do this or you cannot do stamp it. And in order to have something legal, you have to send them a letter signed and stamped by your organization. So that's a very daunting challenge. And trust me, in a developing country, there is a lot of bureaucracy. So if you want to send a letter from your entity, from Ministry of Justice to Ministry of Finance, it will at least take a week. And in terms of cybersecurity, a week is a debt of a company. So in a week, a company is dead if there is no response to that. Similarly, the other thing is understanding of jurisdiction. When I was working with Ministry of IT, we would usually get cases that were seriously criminal offenses. Now, as a professional security professional, I did not know what to do with it. Is it under my jurisdiction? Should I try to hack an account, even if it is for the national security? But am I allowed to do it as an employee of Ministry of IT, or should it be done by the more relevant authorities, such as Ministry of Interior Affairs, such as the Police Department or Intelligence Department or Defense Department? So there comes this dilemma of what should you do and what shouldn't you do? You are stuck between it. Your director will ask you to do it, or your superior will ask you to do it, but should you? Because it's, at the end of the day, it is you who is doing it. Now, this happens because there are no documents that specify what should you do and what shouldn't you do. And the final thing is there is no awareness. It is very important in a developing country to have a very broad awareness program about security challenges, and it's not security challenges, but security, cybersecurity, the security, online security. We had many cases. I mean, I know of some cases in Afghanistan where a guy was performing something really illegal on Facebook, but he did not know it was illegal. He was saying, I'm not doing any harm to that person. I'm just posting something, or I'm just texting him something, or like cyberbullying. And he was like, it's not a crime. I'm just talking with him. So this happens because there is no awareness about what are the threats, what are the crimes, what are okay to do online, and if you do a crime, what is your penalty? I mean, we have a penal code. It is it's a very well written penal code. We have everything covered in that, but try to have some kind of awareness about it, especially at least in the people who are the main target of these cyber crimes, such as kids in high school, such as university ladies in universities, or guys in universities. Like the young generation is specifically or is affected most by these crimes. So why not have awareness programs in universities or in schools? Rather than letting them understand themselves the hard way. So these are the legal challenges. And as I mentioned before, the way forward, I thought it would be much better to say the code for those challenges. In my opinion, personally, I think that the first and far most important thing is to have laws and regulation. In my opinion, the cybersecurity, if we consider cybersecurity a body, then laws and regulations are the blood circulating that body, moving that body around. Private companies should take charge. Private companies are far more bright-minded, far more hardworking, and they should take charge, and government should support it. There should be private companies dealing with security providing security services, and government should support those companies. And one thing that we lack the most is, or developing countries lack the most, is research and development. Government should invest in the research and development. Private companies should invest, or they should join hands together to have something that will provide very good results, because a research done in UK will not be as relevant as a research done in India to Afghanistan, because India is much closer to Afghanistan, much relatively culturally same. But a research done inside Afghanistan will be more effective to Afghanistan compared to the research done in India, because a research done in Afghanistan will be based on the facts and the figures and the numbers, or the events that actually that happens in Afghanistan. And second last thing I want to a point I have is to have a very large awareness program. I think I cannot talk about it in much details because it's a very simple thing. And as a professional, this final thing is, as a professional, personally, if you are a professional and you are coming to Afghanistan, or if you are in Afghanistan and you are a professional field of security, you should have a talk with your higher management to segregate the duties and limit your boundaries. That is one of the things I do when I have a new job anywhere or an interview. Is the first thing I tell them if they offer me a job is like, okay, thank you for the offer, but let's limit the boundaries. How much, where can I work, where should I work, and where should I not work? So I think for a professional, it is very important to limit those boundaries. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for boring you because the other presentations were flawless in this event. But thank you for listening to me. I hope it was up to the standards.
Thank you very much, Abidullah. It was a nice and good session from you. So we want to hear from any participants. If you want to ask any questions, you can unmute yourself or you can put in the chat box. I request Sivaram Krishna to see the chat box and forward the questions to Abidullah.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Nazratullah, you can unmute.
Nasratullah Ghafari, you can talk. Joy Philip, do you want to ask any question?
Yes, sir. Abdullah, sir. Hello, my name is Joy Philip.
Hi, Joy Philip.
Sir, as you were saying about South Koreans who were having about 1,000 people working on cybersecurity, whereas Afghanistan people, like the people working on cybersecurity, were about 30 people in low numbers. So there were low in numbers, right? So they have to work more and they have to take control of more things, right? How do you suggest that it's better to take control of low people and more work? Like they would blame, if there was a breach, they would blame one guy who was having work about many things, right? And how do you suggest that the one guy who was taking control of whole thing take responsibility for that, and how to convince the other guy that uh, it's a maximum work for one guy to handle?
Thank you, Joy Philip. Exactly, you're totally right. As I mentioned, like in countries that are developed or going to be developed very soon, they have their own units for everything. For instance, if a company is a large company, there will be a unit for different security threats that are mostly impacting their business. But when it comes to Afghanistan, there aren't those units. So if a security breach happens, what happens is you take control. No matter what, no matter even if you don't know how to handle that security threat. For instance, you are a guy, a security professional who is very good in a security audit. But as a security auditor, you might not have a very good or grasp understanding of how to have security defense or what to do as a blue team of security. So but even if you don't have it, you have to take control. Currently, at the moment in Afghanistan, you have to take control, or in developing countries. But what happens is, unfortunately, the ways you come up with depends on you. we have recently seen that people come up with very effective ways, not in terms of security or business continuity, but effective ways of handling the situation. As I said, the easiest way to stop security breach is to pull the plug. So in security environments where one person is responsible of many things, usually they don't go for very complicated ways of handling the event or the security breach. They do very simple ways to actually handle the breach. And those simple ways are not usually advised at the moment. But what you can do, what we can do as professionals when we go to such places is we can have very specific limits. We can limit our boundaries with them. We can tell them that I am an auditor and I am not a penetration tester. So I will do the audit, I will create the policies for you, and it is your job to enforce it, or it is not my job to respond to those security threats. This is what you can do as a professional. But even if that's not a chance, then I think there are very easy ways to deal with those threats compared to dealing a threat in India. It will be far more easy to deal with that threat in Afghanistan. And not in terms of complexity, but Afghanistan, the professionals will actually deal it with it in a very simple way. In India, if Flipkart does not function for an hour, it will lose millions. But in Afghanistan, if you close your ministry's website for a day, it will not be very much of a big deal. So we usually have those out, kind of out secure. The websites are usually down sometimes in Afghanistan, so it's not a big deal because none of the critical infrastructure is on that online thing. So I hope I provided a little bit of information about that, Mr. Joy.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your information, and that was clear about higher official blaming you and you handling the situation, telling them that it's my duty to audit and not defend the server or any infrastructure.
Exactly, exactly. No worries, no worries.
There is a question from Mr. Sajid Ali. Sir, what are the skill set required for starting career as cybersecurity?
Oh, okay. So what are the skill set required for starting career in security? That's very broad, actually. Very broad, but as a starter, depends, as I said, starting a career in India will vastly be different from starting a career in Afghanistan. I have seen security professionals in Afghanistan who only has CEH or certified ethical hacker and ECSA, and they have management jobs. And I have seen a lot of people, but let me be clear about it. If in Afghanistan there is an opportunity and you know something about security like CEH, it's a very good chance that you can get it. So it's like in Afghanistan, it is like that. What happens in developing countries, in developed countries, I think I have to do, because I haven't been to those countries. And in Afghanistan, and relatively when I compare it with other countries, the problem is that in Afghanistan or in a developing country, usually there are no starting jobs, as I mentioned before. Usually you are a security expert, you are a security specialist, or you are a senior security specialist. And a senior security specialist in India would be someone who has at least 10 years of experience, or a senior security expert in UK will be someone with 10 to 15 years of experience. But in Afghanistan, if you have 2 to 4 years of experience in IT, you can be a security expert or security specialist. That is one thing. But I think you have to, as a professional, if you want to come to security and start a career, you have to be very clear about it. Which way you want to go? Do you love penetration testing. If you love penetration testing, then of course you can get those certifications in penetration testing, and then you can have that degree related to IT. And I think that will start your career in that path. If you are more into audits, policy level stuff, then it is much better to have a bit of managerial thing and a bit of audit related courses such as ISO or COBIT. So it really depends on preference, but comparing countries, starting career in India as a security a security professional will differ a lot from starting career as a security professional in Afghanistan.
There is a question from Dr. Syed Sahul. So, how the government ERP system is working securely in Afghanistan to handle day-to-day HR management?
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. That is a very interesting question. Mostly, the government systems at the moment, these years in Afghanistan, recently, like let me say in the past couple of years, the most importance. Let me provide you an instance of. Where I work at the moment, that is National Procurement Authority. We have a critical infrastructure that is electronic tendering. It is very critical for our day-to-day. It is basically what we do. We provide tendering. That's what Procurement Authority does. So in terms of our most important or most valuable asset online is our e-tendering system. How we try to make it secure is by having a secure infrastructure for that in the cloud. So we host that in a cloud. For instance, in an Amazon or in Azure or something, where the infrastructure security is not much of a deal or big responsibility for us, because Amazon is much more secure than what I can come up with. But what happens to the day-to-day activities that we do? Usually, HR management is the day-to-day activities like HR management or something like that are not very, very, how can I say, digitalized at the moment. The only digital thing in most of the entities in the government of Afghanistan you can see about HR is fingerprint attendance. And if you want to have a day off, you have to write a letter. If you want to write a proper application and sign it. Or usually if there is a system, it happens in an internal network. So they are not provided anything externally. But sometimes some systems are actually bought online, bought from other companies. We have some systems that handle day-to-day tasks in Ministry of Finance, such as our system for taxation, our system for other related revenue collection or something like that. Usually those systems are not developed inside, but they are usually bought, and everything is provided by the company that gives you the thing. Even sometimes they can provide you a secure infrastructure to develop to host it, like a model for that. So I think that is I hope that answers the question, Doctor.
Thank you. There is another question from Dr. Soumya. So which is
Yes.
the most used antivirus in Afghanistan?
Dr. Soumya, related to that question, when I was in a bachelor's degree, a teacher of us asked us that, what do you think, how much does Microsoft Windows cost? So all of us trying to be very cocky, we said that, oh, it costs around $150, $100 and $80. But and then the teacher laughed at us and he said, no, it costs 30 Afghanis, and for some of you it is free because you can take it from one USB to another USB. Now, the antivirus that is mostly widely used in Afghanistan government, as I have seen in most entities is usually they really like to go with Kaspersky. I don't know why, what is the reason, but mostly people go with Kaspersky. But public usually go with what they can find free or what they can find as a cracked version. So I think that, I hope that's the answer, or at least a little bit answer to that question.
One more question from Mr. Vishwa Bhaskar. How much percentage of cyber crimes in Afghanistan, and what was the major problems faced in your careers?
Thank you, Mr. Viswa. Okay, percentage of cybercrime in Afghanistan, that would be really hard for me to say. That would be really hard for me to say because we have to look at the entity that actually faces that and provides the percentage. The percentage of cybercrime compared to the overall population of Afghanistan is very minimal, in my opinion. Why is it minimal? Because most of we only have internet penetration rate of around 10% in Afghanistan. So it means in 36 million people in Afghanistan, we have only provided internet to around 3.6 million people. So in 3.6 million people compared to the whole population, the is very minimal. One reason can be that. And another reason the cybercrime is minimal is that there is no particular entity that can go after those cyber criminals. As I mentioned in my presentation, there is that dilemma between some entities, whether we should do it or whether the police should do it, whether we should do it or whether the, other entities should do it. So the cyber crime, as you mentioned, it would be very hard for me to say what is the cyber crime percentage in Afghanistan. Sorry for that. But what was the major problem faced in my career was that I was considered, and I think I saw some of my colleagues from Afghanistan are here. Probably they are interested in security, and some of them are really good security professionals. Hats off to them. And I think they might agree with me that usually you are considered that one-man show. You are the one-man army, and you have to do, no matter what happens, if it's a cybersecurity breach, if it's a breach, if it's a denial of service, if it's a awareness program, if it's anything, even if it's the infrastructure engineering, you are the guy because you are the security person. So that was one of the challenges I faced. I in my career of in my very small, relatively small career, I have developed policies, I have audited, performed audits, I have performed penetration testing, I have designed security infrastructure, I have provided awareness. So it means I had to do everything. And as a person who loves penetration testing, I personally love penetration testing and audit. So the thing is, my total focus was being changed from one side to another side. So Wiswa, I hope that is kind of an answer to that. I think Akash also has a question regarding the internet content is open in Afghanistan. Depends, Mr. Akash. There is, as I said, there is no relatively policy, or there is no law or something that can make an entity forced to have an open content. It is usually a matter of interest. We have access to information law, which was actually rated one of the best access to information law in the region. Access to information, it does not mean the internet content. So we have that law, but developing law is one thing, and then enforcing that law is another. And then it also depends on the entities. For instance, the procurement data usually should be open because it is the public should be informed about where their money is going. It is either the money of the taxpayers, or either the money as a the donor provided as fund for these people. So procurement data, what we have to in procurement and National Procurement Authority, what we have done is to abide by the standard of OCDS. Our data is totally open in our website, but relatively to the whole Afghanistan, it is not a kind of what can I say, a kind of a law for them to have content open if it is required. Now, another part of that question might be, do we have some websites that we cannot access? Yes, there is that thing. Some websites you cannot access in Afghanistan. So there is some restriction on that. But other than that, it's totally kind of choice for each organization to do that. If it is not in direct, collision with the the access to information law of Afghanistan. And Mr. Kishore had a question: is there any major problem using free antiviruses or cracked software? In terms of as a security professional, I have to say there is a big problem because we shouldn't be using cracked softwares. In terms of government entity, yes, it's a very big problem. You never know what the cracked software, what kind of backdoor it opens, what happens. And then using an antivirus, whenever we are using a certain software we have to use it for the integrity of it. When we crack it, we lose that integrity of that software. So I think a free antivirus is not a problem. Free antiviruses, I have used free antiviruses for as long as I can remember. Cracked software, using it on a professional level and using it as a person working with the government, or using it as a human being, I think it's morally not good. But is there a major problem? Is there kind of restriction on it from government? Obviously, each government, it is cracked software is a pirated software. It's stealing information. It's stealing that software. So it's actually stealing something. It's not allowed in context of a government, or in context of a country. It's not allowed. But if someone is using it, I really doubt that they will be caught with that. Whether they are using cracked software, whether they are downloading pirated movies, or they are accessing some kind of websites, I really doubt that they will be caught because of the lack of the infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that's all from the participants. I have a question for you myself.
Please.
Yeah, what is the rate of cloud and IoT penetration in Afghanistan, especially cloud? Because I feel like some of the challenges what you mentioned might get reduced or eased if we move our infrastructure to cloud services, I guess.
Yes, exactly. I couldn't agree more. The cloud. The thing is, I think Ministry of IT at the moment is working on creating some sort of a cloud infrastructure in Afghanistan, or at least as long as I remember, they were doing it. So cloud and these all challenges can, in my opinion, personally, I think the challenges I mentioned can be relatively come low or can be solved with cloud. But the penetration of cloud infrastructure in Afghanistan is not very huge. It's not amazingly huge. Currently, some government websites go to cloud. Private companies usually use cloud, but it's not very much. It's not very much. And it's really hard to convince a person who is not the thing is, as a security professionals, in my opinion, there was one software which was really restricted software, and I was involved in not the whole process, but usually in the process of rolling out. And one of the gentlemen there, the software developer, said that I propose we use it on cloud. But looking at the importance of that software and looking at the how the data that software handled was really private, I completely I personally, I completely went against it. I told them, no, this software cannot be hosted in a cloud that is not in Afghanistan, because your jurisdictions do not apply to that cloud company. If the servers are in, let's say you are using Amazon, if the servers are in US, if the server are in another country, they have to abide by the laws of those countries. You cannot have a jurisdiction on that data. Plus, we usually have that question of cloud security in mind. Is my data actually really private in that? With an application that handles so sensitive data? But except that, if there is an open application, such as applications of let's say the whole website, data centers, backup of data centers, I think it is very good if we move it to cloud. But usually there is, in developing countries, bringing a change in an infrastructure is really hard. So I think it is a good, it is the way forward. Obviously, we have to adapt cloud, but it will be it will be a little bit late until we do it. That's my personal opinion. So cloud penetration or usage of cloud technologies in Afghanistan is not that much highly anticipated at the moment. We do have companies, though, that use it.
Yeah, thank you for answering that, and thank you for the insightful session on cybersecurity in Afghanistan in particular, and as a whole, all the developing countries. So yes, we do learn some behind the scenes perspective of how you are handling the things, so which will be helpful for all the participants in their careers as well. So thank you so much for the session, Mr. Abidullah.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the time to present this. I know the whole event was really, really interesting. My presentation, relatively compared to those of the respected doctors and professors, was not that much of an interesting thing, but I wanted to go something not technical, but mostly the challenges or the things that as a professional we might face in our work environment. So I hope you enjoyed it. It was really nice being here, and hopefully we'll collaborate in the future as well.
Thank you, Abidullah. Definitely we'll have a collaborative work in the near future. So thank you very much.
Thank you.